Isn't today's
no, yeah. But I think we finished at Samachay, Amid Beis, the Mishnah.
I thought we were for some Chibud Beis Mishnah. Or could we started the Mishnah? Yeah, we did start the Mishnah. Okay, so we'll do we get to the next Mishnah? Okay, so we'll start from the Mishnah. They used to say, someone is on his way to be killed, he's in chains. The Omar, and he turned to someone there and said, Kisvu get ishti, but he didn't say tnu. Nevertheless, he didn't dot his I's and cross his T's. Or since he was stressed, he maybe didn't dot his T's and cross his I's. So then, Hare Elu Yichtavu V'yitnu. You could assume that this is a proper meaning shlichus. Remember when the Meshkiach of Philadelphia, they were people who were breaking into yeshiva, and they came one day to interview for a job because they were that brazen, and the Meshkiach had to keep them busy, occupied until they can get the cops, because they called the cops to come right away. Were you there then? So Ram was all flustered. She says, "So you know how to sweep the lawn and mow the floor?" Yeah. And then before we knew that 20 cop cars came, surrounded the rest of them. Today, for a break and enter, they wouldn't even respond. Then they even opened it up even more. Never mind someone who's going to his death, but if someone's running to catch a plane and he doesn't cross his T's and dot his I's, and he just says kisvu get, we assume that's what it means, and we allow a get to be written because of him. Even someone who's very unwell. Geniva is our famous guy. Karma affected him because he was Yosy b'Koiler Hava. Geniva was the big Talmid Chacham who used to fight with Mar Zutra. Actually, the beginning of the Gemara, Mar Zutra asked, "Is he allowed to give him over to the Melech? Is he allowed to snitch on him?" And the Gemara answered there that, you know what, Hashem will take care of him. And then it says that Hadavar Yotzim and Piyat Tzadik, and Geniva was already taken b'Koiler. So because people didn't like him because he would fight with them, it ended up leading to him getting into this trouble. So Kiav Nafuk, on his way out, I don't know if he was married or not because he didn't talk about a get, but he said, Amar Habu Arba Me'azuzi l'Rabavina Mechamer Dinar Panya. I want to give 100 zuz to Rav Avina of my wine in Nahar Panya. Now the question is, how will Rav Avina be able to exercise his rights to get this wine? Because there's a little bit of a problem. He didn't say make a kinyan. He just said give. Give doesn't do a kinyan. So Zok Gemara, Amar Rab Zera said, I have very good advice for Rav Avina if he wants to be able to collect on this windfall. And this is what he should do. Dara Rav Avina l'silti. Let him pack up his belongings, pack up food, because he's going to be going on a trip. V'azal and Gabe de Rav Huna, Rabbi. You should go to Rav Huna, because I know Rav Huna will paskin favorably for him in this scenario. We compare a get of a person who's in stress to a matana, to somebody who's in stress. Actually, I should take it back. Generally, we compare a get to a matana. Ma matanasai im amat chayzer. Just like if he gave a matna shchivmara, meaning he's giving it only because he thinks he's not going to need it anymore because he's passing on. But if he miraculously becomes healthy and he makes it back, the matana comes back to him. Afgito, so to his get, if he gives a get under these conditions, im amat chayzer, if he becomes better and he ends up coming back, he could be chayzer on the get. So that's one thing we know. And what's going to be relevant to us is magitoi, afal gav deloy paris. Just like the get will be a get, even though he didn't say kisvu or tnu, he just said kisvu, kivin amar kisvu, afal gav deloy amar tnu, af matanosoi. Thank you so much. So to his matana, kivin amar tnu, even though he said tnu, but he didn't make a kinyan, afal gav deloy kanim, it's yours. So basically, according to Rav Huna's psak, Rav Avina is entitled to take that Geneva left him, because merely Geneva is saying Tanu is enough, even though no kinyan was made. It's Geniva? It's an action. It could be not Lurvim. But it said Machana Shem Chavayda, I'm a Shchadek Lema boss. I have to call him by his right name. Geniva. Mask of law. The reason why I said Geneva is because yesterday I was listening to a shir online, and they called him Geneva. So it's just a could be. So Mask of law Rab Abba. Rab Abba had a kasha. How could you bring a raya? How could you bring such a raya to say that matana will be similar to get? They're not, because I'm going to blow your whole theory out of the water. I matana yeshna lachamisa, af get yeshna lachamisa. Just like matana, after his death, we give it to the recipient. Are you going to say that the get works lachamisa? Nobody would argue the get works lachamisa. So your whole comparison between get and matana is not valid. So that's not true at all. It's very valid. There's just a technical difficulty by get, but in Hilchas Nesina it could work. In either way, in either case, the thing will transfer lachamisa. The whole problem is if a get transfers lachamisa, it's too late. A get lachamisa mi'ika, but you don't have a raya that the whole thing is ogush. You don't have a raya the whole thing is ogush. So the problem is, if it's pretty obvious that it should work, so then what's the problem? Because what happened is Reb Abba is asking a kasha on Reb Zera, on his approach that Reb Huna's mahalach will be able to acquire for Reb Avina these assets. But what was the problem? Lamaisa, it's very comparable. Get and Misha should be comparable, and therefore it should work. So Reb Abba, this is what the difficulty Reb Abba had as to why Reb Avina shouldn't be able to collect it. Because matna shchivmer rabba mixasi. Usually when a matna shchivmer works, it's he's giving away all his assets because I won't need them anymore. But here, Geneva didn't give away all his assets. He gave away some of the value of his wine. So maybe that shouldn't work at all because that doesn't have the halacha of matna shchivmer. Correct. So it would need a kinyan. Zok Gemara, but Rav Huna says it works, right? Rav Huna said it works. That's why Rav Zera sent Rav Avina to Rav Huna. So Mechlal Rav Huna sover loy by kinyan. Are you telling me that Rav Huna would hold a matna shchivma even b'mixas doesn't need a kinyan? V'kaimal on the boy kinyan. We know that it does need a kinyan. Zok Gemara shiny hacha. Even a matna shchivma b'mixas works if it's mitzava machmas misahu. If it's quite clear that it's being mitzava machmas misa, as it is over here, because he's being literally let out to being killed, that would work as well. So it's another madrega. Even the machmas shchivma works if it's mamash machmas misa. Michlal, but it seems like Rabbi Abba had a problem with it. He asked the kasha. Michlal de Rabbi Abba sovar mitzava machmas misa boy kinyan, but that's not true either. You're kaimalon deloy boy kinyan. El Rabbi Abba hachika kasha. This is what Rabbi Abba's problem was. Rabbi Abba's problem is that there was a fault in the actual gift that Geneva gave. He gave him something impossible because the words that he said made no sense at all. Because Geneva didn't say, I'm giving you wine, and Geneva didn't say, I'm giving you money. This is what he said. Chamer loika amar, and he didn't say demei chamer either. He didn't say $400 worth of wine, and he didn't say wine. He said $400 of wine. You can't give $400 of wine. Wine is not money. So the words he said made no sense. So nachamo. How could you give $400 wine? Wine is not currency. Wine is wine. You can give $400 worth of wine. But he said, I'm giving $400 wine. That makes no sense. What does that mean? I'm sorry? Oh, so he holds that. He says we let you not make a kinyan, even though you don't make a kinyan. Even though you don't make a kinyan, we'll say it works. But you didn't even say what you're giving. You didn't say what you're giving. If you say I'm giving him unicorns, there's no he didn't identify what he's giving. So you're saying he meant. You're saying he must have meant. I hear. So that's precisely what the dispute will be. Do you use this concept of mitzvah machmos misa works even though I didn't have a lot, even though I didn't have a good lashon kinyan, or do you even use it to describe what I'm giving even though I didn't properly describe it? That's precisely what the shaila would be. So Dr. Gemara ve'idach, you know why he said mechamra? It's not a mistake. It's quite calculated. So actually, the Gemara agrees that if he doesn't identify what he's giving, you cannot use matna shchivmera to fix that. But the Gemara is here saying mechamra was very calculated because he was giving a hybrid. He was giving money or chamra. Why is there an advantage to that? Mechamra kedel yafes es koychai. What does it mean kedel yafes es koychai? Let's say he said I'm giving $400 worth of wine, okay, and the part of the wine got spoiled, or all of the wine got spoiled. So now the Yarshim will say, sorry, Rebbe Bina, what you were going to get is ruined. Too bad, right? What happens if they sell the wine and the cash of the wine gets lost or something? They'll say, sorry, pal, there's nothing left for you. By saying wine, 400 zuz, that's saying no matter what is there, if there's money in the estate, he can claim it, and if there's wine in the estate, he can claim it. So basically, what Geneva was trying to do was make sure that Rabbi Avinu was going to get. So let's see Rashi. He didn't have a good lashon to say that I'm giving money, and he didn't have a clear lashon to say that I'm giving wine. So Rabbi Avinu should really be able to extract his value. All of the wine will be achrayis for him to get his $400. If he said giving wine, well then if 100 barrels of the wine had become chametz, had become vinegar, sorry, we feel bad. This was what my father meant to give to you. You're out of luck. What if he would have only said demei chamra? And they would have sold some of the wine, and the money would have gotten lost. They'll tell him, what a shame. We sold it. That was you lost it. Too bad. Now, the mashmiyayin vidamav shakal achrayis. So what that does is it makes all of the wine liable to pay Abavina his share. But Geneva was a smart guy. He worded it because he wanted to make sure that Rabbi Avina would get it. So the kasha is, clearly he was quite calculated. So why does he get the benefit of Matna Shchivra? The whole part why Matna Shchivra works is because a guy is not thinking clearly. Geneva was thinking very, very clearly. But he also knew the lumps of Matna Shchivra. In fact, that's exactly why he said it. Right, so he knew that halacha do, but Tzavach also only works because a guy is not clear. So the problem I have over here is it's not my fault. It's kasha. The problem is, so because of this problem, so the whole issue is they didn't express it right. Other than that, there's no issue, right? So then why did the Rebbe have to send him to Rav Huna for it? Rav Huna's chiddush is that it's good even though I didn't take kinyan. Everybody holds like that. The whole dispute was that he used a good lashon. Right, so that's, I think Toshus asked that kasha. Toshus asks, first he asks the kasha that it could be a davar shalom olam, but then I think over here he asks it. 1 second. Where is it? I saw someone ask it. Maybe I dreamt it. But that was my kasha. Why is it that how is Rav Huna going to help him if it's here it is in Taimar? It's halfway down in the second Toshus. Why exactly do I need Rav Huna for? Even the Amar Tnu, he said Tnu, the Abgav Loy Kanumene, Hapshita, the Matna Shchibara, the Kula, or Mitzvah Machos Visa, the Loy Beinin Kinyan. Because that was never the dispute. The whole dispute was that he used a good lashon. So how is Rav Huna going to help Rav Avina with that aspect? We still needed Rav Huna. The Geneva, even in a case where a guy is being led out to his death, like the story of Geneva, the Maisi Allah, the Yesh Loy Din Shchivra, it has a Din Shchivra. So we still need to tell you that there's din shchivra. I don't understand exactly what Tosfos' teretz is, because it seems like that was never a point of dispute. It seems like everybody agrees to that. But that's what Tosfos says. Somebody was stuck in a bar, and he screams up, if anybody's up there, please write a get for my wife. But he didn't say tnu. Back to Gemara, how do I know there's a human in there? Maybe he's a shade, and it's just a scam. And in fact, we're going to be megarish a woman who's not megareshes. It's I guess you looked in and you saw the form of who seems like a person. No, so very good point. I'm sorry for missing that out. Rashi says, "Upirish Shemoi v'Shemiroy." My name is Yankov from Bialystok, and please give my wife a get. Thank you for bringing that up. It's a very important Rashi that I should have read. Zok to Gemara, V'lech Hashem Shedu. Maybe he's a shade. Amar Yehuda Kisharoyaloi Demusadim. You looked in and it looked like a person. Correct Gemara. Inunami idmuye idmui. They also look like humans. Zok to Gemara, you're right. But the Chazalei Bebua. You saw his shade. So if he's a shady character, so could be he's a shade. Correct Gemara, what does that prove? Inunamu isl bebua. The shadim have shade as well. They create shadows as well. Gemara, the chazulei bebua de bebua. It's the shade of the shade. I didn't get clarity in exactly how that works. The article says that when at the end of the day, when the shadows are long because the sun is lower on the horizon, you'll see a shade, and then past the shade there'll be another lighter outline, which is a secondary shade. So shadim don't have shade. Oh, maybe these are bua. That's right. I was thinking about that. This is bua. Okay. So I'll call upon him. There are certain characteristics that a shade does not have, and if it was clear that this didn't have the characteristics of a shade, we can trust that it was this woman's husband who is trying to send her again. V'dilma inu nami islahu. How do you know they don't have the shade of a shade? Amar Chanina limadetani Yonason b'ni. My son Yonason taught me. I don't know how Yonason knew, but if you look at the Aleph, you will see that it says Yonason Sheda. My pal Yonason, the shade. So my shade told me, my friendly neighborhood shade told me, my own personal Casper, that bebua islahu, bebua de bebua leslahu. They have a double chin, they don't have a triple chin. Fact Gemara, Vidil Mutsarihi, maybe it was her co-wife in the bar that was saying that so that so her co-wife will think that she's divorced and she's really not, then she'll be also to her husband, and then she'll be able to get it all to herself. So this co-wife must have sounded exactly like a man. Well, you can't see deep down in the bar. You just see a shadow. Right? You see a form of a person in the shadow. You can't tell what it is. But Dilmatsarihi, I don't know. Usually you could tell the difference between the voice of a woman and the voice of a man. What? No, you just see a shadow. You don't see clearly. It's possible that you don't see clearly. I have
She used AI.
Oh, come on. What do you mean she's trying to ruin her co-wife? She's a Zaman Mensch. He, him. Ho, ho. Ho, ho, ho. Gewaltig. So sometimes I'm tempted to say to people who service me, I don't care what your pronouns are. It's none of my business. Just do what I asked you to do. Right? I go to a teller. Him, he. I don't care what you are. Just put my money in the bank. What am I going to do? Anyway, Zok to Gemara v'dil Matzari. I remember I have a friend whose wife sounds exactly like him, and every time I call his house and she answers, I say hello, Yankel, and she says no, it's a Rivki, and I always get embarrassed by it. But they sound exactly alike. So vice versa, such a shayach. Never happened to you? Huh? Yeah. So yeah, that's right. V'dil Matzari. Talking about ton of baby Shmuel. B'shas hasakana koisen v'nois and apal b'sheimakin. You know what? Even though it's not clear, but shasa shakana, what's shasa shakana? This person is in a bar and he's in danger of dying. If we're not going to write the get for her, she'll become an aguna. And therefore, even if you're not sure, if someone identifies himself as so and so, you could give a get based on his own identification. Yeah, here. Habari sha'amar kisu get l'ishti. What if a bari said kisu get l'ishti and not snu? He has to say it right. If he didn't say it right, clearly rotza l'sachikba. He's clearly trying to chepper with her. Zok to Gemara. Normally, when a Mishnah brings a story, it's to support what it just said. So we're going to see a story that's going to prove that if a bari says kisu, it's not a good mina shlichus. Ma'aseh b'bari echad sh'amar kisu get l'ishti. And then after he said that, he climbed up to the top of the roof, v'nafal, and he fell umeis and he died. Amar Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, if he committed suicide, harei get. Then the person who he told before he jumped off, that person has a minu shlichus, because it's gloy milsalam afreya that he was about to die, and therefore we'll accept his kitzu as kitzu tnu. But in Maruch Daksai, if he wasn't planning to jump, but when he went down on the roof, he slipped and fell, ain't no get, then it's not a get, because when he gave the tzivui, he had no idea that his end was near. Correct. That's right. It had to have been that till he climbed up to the top, they had already written and given the get. That's right. That's because they didn't get Nachamisa. Lister, I don't understand. The halacha that the Mishnah says is it doesn't work, and then the Mishnah tells a story of where it did work. That's not normally how the Mishnah presents itself. If at the end of the story we see, in fact, that he was preparing to die, then I raise a get. Shimon ben Gamaliel commented, but in Maruch Dachsoi, ain't I get. Zok more weiter. Who gavra the old levei knish? A person went into the Beis HaKnesses. Ashkach makri yunuka uvarei. He saw a Malamed and his son, the Yosy that were sitting there at the Besmedrash. The Yosef inish achina gabayu, and there was a third person there as well. Amalahu, he said, out of you three, beitrei minaichu nichtavu gita ledevisu. Two of you three people, I am appointing to write a get for his wife, and he meant his own wife, but as Asaginor, he didn't want to embarrass himself, right to my wife, so he said write to Yenim's wife. But it was understood that he wanted them to write a get for his own wife. L'soif shachiv makri yenuka. What happened is the Malamed died, so he cannot be one of the people to write the get. He's not around anymore. So the question is, when I told these three people, two of you should do it, would I even have a havamina to be appointing the son when the father's there? Or maybe if the father's there, you didn't include the son. Mi mashve inchi bra shlicha b'makam abba. Would someone appoint a son as a shliach where his father's there? Oy loy or not? As Rashi says, mi mashve inchi bra shliach b'makam abba. The loy makbid b'haiminayu. I don't care if it's the son who does it, or the father who does it. Umeikara l'haibra nami shabbos shliach. When you said two of the three, I meant even the son could be one of those two. So the son who survived and the third person could be the two people who will give the get. The Baal is gone, so that's our only hope to free this woman. Rav Nachman Amar loy mashvi inish bra shlicha b'makam abba. Rav Papi Amar mashvi inish bra shlicha b'makam abba. Amar Rava hilchasa mashvi inish bra shlicha b'makam abba. The halacha is no one has any reservation about giving the son a minu shlichus, even though the father is right there. Yeah, of course. I hear. Amar lishnayim. If someone told two people to nu get lish, give a get to my wife, and Rashi says, Afal gav, the loy Amar kisvu utnu. He just said tnu by itself. Harei elu yachtemu ba'atzman. they have a responsibility to be the Eid Chasima on the get itself. They cannot subcontract that work. They were given the mandate to sign the get. They cannot pass it on. The lav bezdin meninu litzavos alacherim. If he says to three people, as the Mishnah will tell us when we turn over, I want you to be in charge of writing a get, that means you don't have to do it yourself. That means as a bezdin, you have to hire people, you have to arrange people to do it. But if I'm only speaking to two people, that's not making them into a bezdin. Therefore, I obviously mean that you yourself should be the ones to do it. The law bezdin meninu litzavos alacherim el edim shevinu. You're merely edim. The Gemara mafarish al ksava get. Till now, we're discussing who needs to sign the get, but who's going to actually write the get? Who's going to be the sofer? So the Gemara is going to discuss al ksava get im yicholim litzavos l'sofer acher lichtoid by hem atzman shvichin l'koisvay. Do we have to write the get ourselves? Is that what our mandate is, or does the husband who's appointing us mean that we could find a sofer to write it? We're not sofer, and we only have to sign it ourselves. That's going to be a big discussion in the Gemara, a little bit of complicated discussion. Nu get leishti. Oy l'shloisha kisu get utnu leishti. So by shloisha he said kisu because he's specifically saying I don't want you to be a bezdin. Kisu, you need to write it yourself. As Rashi says, Avabi shen ru'uin leyasos bezdin. Even to behead your amalu kisu loy bezdin shevinu eleidim. Clearly, I'm giving you a task. I'm not giving you the mandate to be the manager. I'm not making you a manager. I'm making you a worker. They have to write the get, and they can give the get. What about Amal Shlosha Tnu Get Lishti? So that already is making them into a bezin, because he didn't say Kisvu. Then Hare Elu Yoimu La'acherim V'yichtavu. They can now commission other people, side to write the get, side to sign the get, and side to deliver the get. As Rashi says, Mepnei She'asan Bezdin, as the Mishnah says, Mepnei She'asan Bezdin, Divrei Reb Meir. V'zu halacha hela Rab Chanina ish oinoi mi beis asurin. This is the halacha that Rab Chanina bought back from Rabbi Akiva, who was locked in jail, and when he went to visit Rabbi Akiva taught him this halacha. Mekubal ani, I was makabel from Rabbi Akiva. V'oimer l'shloisha tenu get l'ishti. So that's called the meaning of Bezdin. Sheyoimru la'acherim, they have the right to hire people, to instruct people, v'yichtavu, to write to get, mipnei she'asan Bezdin, because they were given a mandate from the husband to be manage the case. Rabbi Yosy said, I disagree. Noiminu l'shliach, as Rashi, Omarnu l'shliach, we'll tell the shliach, meaning we'll tell Rab Chanina, who was a shliach for us, to bring the halacha and deliver it to us. From Rabbi Akiva, we're going to tell him, Af anu mikubalim, we had a different Kabbalah. And you know what our Kabbalah is? Shafilu amar lebezdin hagadol shebirushalayim tenu get lishti. Even if he told the bezdin, not just three people, he told the high bezdin in Yerushalayim tenu get lishti, he doesn't mean to make them into a bezdin. He means to mandate themselves with the work. Sheyilmedu v'yichtavu v'yitnu. Even though they're not soifrim, they're going to have to go take a sofer course, and they're going to have to learn how to write to get themselves, and they're going to have to sign to get themselves, and then they're going to give it. As Rashi says, Yilmedu im einam yoidin lichtoiv, even if the dayanim are not soifrim, Yilmedu lichtoiv achi yichtavu ba'atman, they have to write it by themselves. There's no such thing as making the bezin. No one's being made a manager. You want to do the job? Do the job. I'm not interested in the manager. I'm sorry? No, but they couldn't. This woman will be in a guna otherwise. Amar la sor. What if we told 10 people, Kisu tnu get leishti, write and give a get to my wife? The halacha is echad kosev v'shnayim choshbin. Because meaning what he meant to say is, out of the pool of 10, I need 1 to write and 2 to sign. I don't need that all 10 of you should be involved. But if I said kulchem ksuvu, that means I'm making everybody in charge. I want everybody to be involved. So then echad kosev v'kulam choshbin, they all have to sign because that's what he mandated. I don't want them to be a kosher get unless you all sign it. Why would he do that? To humiliate his wife. That everybody should know about it. If one of them died, raise the get bottle, because if he's not going to sign, the get won't be a good get. They sent a shaila from the Bismillah of Rab to Shmuel. Yilamdenu Rabbeinu. The Rebbe, please teach us. What happened to Amar Lishnayim Kisu utnu get leishti. They told someone kisvu utnu get leishti, which seems to mean that they made him into a bezdin, right? But Allah is no, he didn't make him into two people. The mission should be fairish. I'm sorry. The mission should be fairish. If he said two people, it's not making them to a bezdin. He's saying they have to do it themselves, right? The amr l'soifer v'kasem. They didn't write it. They hired a soifer to write it, but the chasmuhin, they signed. So the question is, the mandate that was given to them by the husband, was it that they have to write and sign to get themselves? Or maybe I just meant that you should sign to get yourself, but you can hire a soifer to write it. Mahu. Shalach lahu. You know what Shmuel answered? This is a very difficult shaila. Teitze, if she already remarried based on this get, unfortunately, she has to divorce her husband. Talmud. This requires great analysis as to whether or not this was a good get, because maybe the husband meant that not only do they have to sign the get, these two people, they have to write it as well, and they didn't. Maya davar tzarich talmud. What is the question? Why are we struggling? What is the issue over here? Mili is if you have a document. Let's say you're shlich loilacha, you have a document and you want to pass it on to a different shliach. That would be good. You can pass on a shlichus if it's something that's mamoshistic. Mili, just words, meaning kiss get leishti. It's just a mandate to write a get. Maybe mili you cannot give over to a shliach. Mili imimser in the shliach, iloi mimser in the shliach. Maybe that's the question. And therefore, since Shmuel is not sure if this mandate can be transferred to another shliach, he says, I'm not sure if this get is kosher, because this get was written through a transfer of mili. But that's not true, because the Amar Shmuel Amar Rebbe, halachic Rabbi Yosy, the Amar mili lo memser in the shliach. We know that Shmuel holds, without a doubt, that mili lo memser. So why is Shmuel saying Vadavar Tzarichion? Shmuel should have said unequivocally, it's not a good get. Ella l'Shmuel hakam abayla. The reason why Shmuel thinks it might yes be a get is because we need to. What the suffix is what the man meant when he made this minui, and this is the question: Haik suvu iksav yodon iksav get. When he said kisvu to get leishti, did he say kisvu sign the get and give it to my wife? And obviously, I meant sign the get, so obviously I meant that somebody else should write it. Or that I mean ksav when I said kisvu nu get lishti, I meant you should write it as well. So it's really a question what he himself meant. So mili is when I'm transferring over a mandate that I have without your instruction. But if you tell me to get somebody else, that might be different. So maybe that the question is in Shmuel's mind is when the person is kisvu nu get lishti, what did he mean? Did he mean that I dafka want you to sign, or did he also mean I dafka want you to write to get as well? Obviously, we're not going according to Rabbi Yosy. That's correct. Rabbi Yosy bar Mishnah? No. Rabbi Yosy that holds mili lemem shel l'shlichus. Take them over. Tivshit lei mimasnisin. Why can't we bring a raya from a Mishnah? Amol l'shnayim tnu get leishti. Or l'shloisha kisu get tnu leishti. Hare'elu yichtavu v'yitnu. So you see, they have to write to get. It says in the Mishnah, Hare'elu yichtavu v'yitnu. Even before Rabbi Yosy in the Mishnah. Zok Gemara, no, he guva kamabayle. He's not sure, actually, taich of the Mishnah. He's not sure of taich in the Mishnah. And what does the Mishnah mean? When it says Hare'elu yichtavu v'yitnu, what does it mean? Does it mean ksuva ksav yadanu? Does it mean the ksiva meaning they should really sign to get? Or ksav get? Who? Or did he mean the ksav get? So the same shiloh that Shmuel is thinking about, he actually had touch in the Mishnah. What does the Mishnah mean when he said kisvu tu? Did he mean we have to write to get ourselves, or did he mean we could get somebody else to write it? We just have to sign it ourselves. Zakumar shita the ksav haget. It's pashut that it means writing the get itself, and it doesn't just mean signing it. How do I know? And now the Gemara is going to bring a shtickle right from what Chaim such a. The Katani Seifa, the Seifa of this Mishnah says, Rabbi Yosy noiminu l'shliach. Af anu mikubalim shafilu omar lebezin agadol shabiru shalayim tnuget leishti sheyilmedu v'yichtavu v'yitnula. If all we're discussing is whether or not they have to sign it themselves, then we have a very big difficulty, because one of them have to learn how to do it. Does anybody not know how to sign? If it's yilmedu, obviously they have to learn how to write the get via cipher. So obviously that is the shaila here. The shaila is, do they have to do the ksivas to get themselves? And the shaila is not whether or not they have to do chasima. Surely they have to do chasima. The question is if they even have to do the ksiva. It makes sense that Bezdin would have to learn how to be sofer because a dain normally is not trained to be a sofer. If it's merely a question of signing, what does the Bezdin have to learn? Mi kamidi, the lo yodi, michtam chasimus yedayu. Could it be possible that you have a dain who doesn't even know how to sign his name? Zokt Gemara in. As a matter of fact, yeah. If it's a new Bezdin, they might be big Talmid Chachamim, and they don't know how to sign. The level of education, though, this was interesting. You could have been a massive Talmid Chacham, non kolot kula, but you never learned how to sign your name. Of course, a dain, as he gets more experience, will learn how to sign. But it's possible that you'll have a dain who won't know how to sign. And weiter, maybe the question is still, do they have to sign? We don't necessarily know that they have to write together. Zok to Gemara, v'svirlon daik subu ksav yodanhu, haksav get kosher. If you're going to want to hold on that side, that all the husband meant was to say that you need to sign to get yourself, but I'm giving you the right to subcontract and hire somebody to write the get itself. That cannot be, because the Amar Shmuel Amar Rebbe Halacha Rabbi Yosy the Amar Mili Lememser and L'Shliach. The problem is, if you hold Mili Lememser and L'Shliach, so what's the difference? Even if the husband didn't want to bedavka make you write the get, rather you could get somebody else. Why isn't that Mili? You're still taking a mandate and passing it on to somebody else. Zok Gemara Amri Isvirlon Diksuvu Ksavyodonhu. If you're going to hold that what the husband meant was merely to sign the get, he never meant to say you have to write to get yourself, then we'll say Ksav Haget Nasa Keoimer Amru. The Ksav Haget, Lagaber Ksav Haget, since the husband didn't address it, he just said you sign and give a get, and he meant just to sign it. So who's writing it? So we can deduce from what he said is that he meant you should find somebody else, a cipher, to write the get. So now it's not regular mili. Now it's mili that you've been specifically instructed by the husband to get somebody to do. Maybe that's not such a problem. Mili is maybe just on your own if you decide to take what you're supposed to do and give it to somebody else. But if you're instructed by the Baal to find somebody else, maybe that wouldn't have the same problem as mili. Maybe Rabbi Yosy would be moide that even though mili is loy memser n'shliach, by oimer imru, meaning when I'm telling you to give it over, there may be mili memser n'shliach. So weiter, that is Shmuel Suffolk. The Suffolk is if what the husband meant, and even if the husband meant, that's right. The question is what the husband meant, and if the husband meant that you should give it over, it means that there's no problem of mili when you're instructed to do so. Are you going to argue that Rabbi Yosy says by Omer Imri there's no problem of mili? And here we have to focus a little bit because the next quarter Omid is going to be a little bit complicated. So what's our deal now? Our deal now is, does Rabbi Yosy hold that Omer Imru overcomes the problem of mili? Just to be crystal clear, what's the definition of Omer Imru? If I just tell someone write a get and he wants to pass it on, that's mili. But if I tell somebody find somebody else to write the get, or I imply to somebody find somebody else to write the get, there's no chasaron of mili because you've been instructed to do just that. So I'm going to prove to you, Zok to Gemara, that Rabbi Yosy holds that even by Omer Imru, you have the same problem of mili and it does not work. Why? But nan we learned a Mishnah. The Mishnah says this is very much Talmudic logic. Ksav sofer the eight kosher. If you have a sofer wrote it and an eight signed it, it's kosher. There's not really much of a chiddush in that. That's how every get works. But for Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, he changed the girsa and he said chasam sofer shenimi, meaning the sofer himself is also allowed to be one of the signatories. So you don't need a sofer and then have two other people to sign. The sofer could be one of the signatories. What's the problem with that? The problem with that is as follows. If the sofer was the one who the husband wanted to sign, it's no problem at all. But what would happen in exactly our case, where the husband said, Kisvu, nu get lishti, he told it to two Eidim, right? Which means, basically what he said is, you two people, I want you, Badavka, to be the signers, right? You can get somebody to write the get. So now, these two people are going over to a sofer, right? And they're saying, Yankel, we were asked to hire you to be a sofer. Okay, can I sign to? No, he can't sign because he doesn't trust you for that. He only trusts you to write it. Very insulting. So we're afraid that since these two shluchim are going to be embarrassed to tell the sofer that they're hiring to write the get that the husband doesn't want them to sign, he'll say, okay, you could sign it too. If the sofer signs it, what's going to happen is be a possible get because the instructions were that we two should sign. Yet we were embarrassed, uncomfortable to tell him that he shouldn't sign, and because of that, he's done the possible get. So if you hold that Omer Imru works, then when the sofer is told by these two shluchim to sign, he'll sign it because he's allowed to do it. But if Omer Imru doesn't work, and everybody knows that, if they tell the sofer to sign, the sofer will say, I can't sign it. I need to hear it directly from the Bailam. And since I didn't hear it directly from the Bailam, I'm not going to sign it. So if you hold that Omer Imru works, you have a very, very big risk. How can you ever allow a sofer to sign even when he's told directly from the Bailam that he can sign? If it's known that sofer could sign, now we're going to have a problem. Every time two people go over to a sofer and tell them to sign, there might be a big problem. So it's much safer if a sofer can never sign unless he's directly instructed by the Bailam. Kasha for mine. So therefore, Rab Chisda elaborates. So the Gemara is going to say what I just said. I just wanted to explain it before because it's a bit complicated. Our mission going to Rabbi Yosy, the Amar Mili Lemem from the Shliach, and not even Omer Imru. So therefore, we don't need to worry about a sofer signing when he didn't have authority to sign, because he's only going to be signing if he had been directly instructed by the Bailam to sign. If Rabbi Yosy is moed by Omer Imru, that's not a problem of Mili, well then the sofer will sign if he's merely told so by the Eidim. So that could lead to a serious disaster. It's possible that a husband will appoint two Eidim and tell them, Imru l'sayfer v'yichtav, u'leploinu v'yichtamu. He tells the shliach, I want you to ask Yankel to write the get, then I want you to get Shimon and Beryl and get them to sign the get. When Mishum Kesuva the Sefer, the shliach is going to be a shtickle embarrassed that the husband wants you to write the get, but he doesn't trust you to sign it. So what will he do? When Mishum Kesuva the Sefer, Chayshi umachasmi chad mehanach sahadi v'Sefer badayu. He'll be uncomfortable telling the Sefer that the husband does not want him to sign, and they'll let him sign. The Sefer will say, okay, if you're telling me, so obviously the Baal told you to tell me, and I don't think you could do it. And that won't be a good get. But if you hold Omer Imru was possible, then the Sefer will say, you can't tell me to sign the get. He has to tell me himself. Zok to Gemara, we're not worried. Really, Omer Imru was kosher. Omer Imru was kosher, so why are we not worried? Why are we not worried that this could lead to a terrible disaster that the Sefer will sign when he was not mandated to do so? So tomorrow, because even the Amar Mar kosher, the loy sasa can be Yisrael l'shkiach. Yes, it is kosher, but the halacha is you're strongly discouraged from doing something like that. So therefore, since you're strongly discouraged to do something like that, even though technically it's mutter, that's enough. In other words, you don't say if it's kosher, it's going to lead to a disaster. Because it's kosher, but it's highly advised against. So there's not a problem. Correct them, okay. But we have another problem. If you're going to hold Omer Imru works, we have another problem. What if the husband instructs two people, Imru l'sayfer v'yichtay, ask the Sefer to sign, the atem chasumu, and you yourself sign. These two are going to go, Mishum Kesuva the Sefer. They'll be embarrassed to tell the Sefer, we have to sign. We don't trust you. And now the Sefer is going to sign as one of the Eidim. It'll be a possible get. So they answered, you're right. That's also, even though it works, but it's strongly discouraged. So since it's strongly discouraged, we're not going to choshid for such a scenario. Zok to Gemara, okay, that's very good. That's if you're going to take a hold that it's strongly advised again. And Lamanda Amar Kosher Visasa, there's a Manda Amar who holds that from 100% for us to do that. So meaning, if the husband tells two people, find somebody to write the get and then you sign it, they can do that. So if that's the case, we have a big problem. Michael Memar. Ella Rabbi Yosy Tarti Amar. What you have to say is, in fact, you have a raya, you do have a raya that Rabbi Yossi holds that Omer Imru doesn't work because of our kasha. If Omer Imru worked, it could lead to a terrible disaster. And you're right, that's what Rabbi Yossi holds. But who holds Shmuel agrees with them. So Rabbi Yossi is a tarti. Side that mili lememser l'shliach, and side that even Omer Imru doesn't work. And Shmuel, who's doubtful, savar lakavasei bechada upolag le bechada. He agrees with Rabbi Yossi that mili lememser l'shliach, but he's not sure. He disagrees with Rabbi Yossi. By Omer Imru, he disagrees with Rabbi Yossi, and he also does work. Therefore, Shmuel had a question when someone tells a person, write a get and give it to my wife. Maybe he means to say you should sign the get, but you should find somebody else to write it, and you could do that. It won't be mealy because I'm implying as if I'm instructing you to specifically hire a third party to write the get. Beautiful. So at the end of the day, the raya was a little complex, but the pshat is very simple. The question is, if I tell people write and sign the get and give it to my wife, do I actually mean that you should write the get yourself, or do I mean you can get a cipher to write it and you just have to sign? That was a shayla that remained unclear, and Shmuel said, I don't know. So therefore, Shmuel says the chumrah, she has to leave her second husband, and they have to write a new get. Gufa. Amar Shmuel, Amar Rebbe. Halachik Rabbi Yossi, halachik Rabbi Yossi, the Amar Mili loy memser in l'shliach. Mili cannot be given over. Amar lefon of Rabbi Shimon Rabbi, vayachash Rabbi Meir, v'chanina ish oinei cholkin al Rabbi Yossi. Since Rabbi Meir and Chanina ish oinei argue on Rabbi Yossi, ma ra Rabbi loymer halachik Rabbi Yossi. Why would Rabbi have passing like Rabbi Yossi that Mili loy memser? And there's so many people who argue. Amar loy, he answered, shesoik b'ni shesoik. Don't bring such a thing up. You have no right to ask a question why Rav should have wanted to paskin like Rabbi Yossi. You know what? Why Rebbe would have paskin like Rabbi Yossi? You know why? Ilmali reisu nemika umay. If you would have seen him and seen how clear he was and how everything he said, he had a pure, beautiful support and raya to, you would never question why Rebbe would want to paskin like him. The Tanya Izi ben Yehuda Hayamoina Shvachin Shal Chachamim. He was talking about the greatness of the Chachamim. Rab Meir Chacham the Sefer, Rab Yehuda Chacham l'Chashayirtza, Rab Tarfon Gal Shalagoizin, Rabbi Shmuel Chanus Muzenis, Rabbi Akiva Oitzer Bolam, Rabbi Yochanan Nuri Kupas Haroichlin, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Kupas Albasamim, Mishnus Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Kavanoki, Rabbi Yossi Nimuka Imai, Rabbi Shimon Teichen Arba Umoitzi Kima. Okay, we're going to have to go through these things tomorrow, but that's what we'll start. This will be a nice sugya to start tomorrow. Sorry.